World News in 5.
Right now.
News and developments making headlines around the world in 5 minutes. World News in 5. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Good day to all of our listeners here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. This is World News in 5 and I'm your host, Steph Vicente. Tensions between Iran, Israel, and the United States have sharply escalated following Israel's renewed offensive against Hezbollah in Lebanon. The BBC reports Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu initially agreed to hold back further strikes after strong warnings from U.S. President Donald Trump, who feared it could continue or undermine, a fragile U.S.-Iran ceasefire. The pause was conditional on Hezbollah halting rocket attacks, but continued exchanges quickly weakened the agreement. Israel later carried out airstrikes in Beirut's southern suburbs in response to ongoing rocket fire, signaling the collapse of the ceasefire. Shortly afterward, Iran launched a barrage of missiles and drones into Israel, vowing to continue its attacks for several days. Analysts say the situation now hinges on Israel's next move, raising concerns that a broader regional conflict could intensify once again. In related news, as mentioned earlier, Israel has carried out airstrikes on southern Beirut, marking the first attack on the Lebanese capital since a U.S.-brokered ceasefire took effect last week. According to BBC News, Lebanese health officials say the strikes hit residential buildings in a Hezbollah-controlled area, killing 2 people and injuring at least 20, including women and children. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the operation targeted what he described as terrorist infrastructure in response to Hezbollah rocket fire into Israeli territory. The escalation follows renewed regional tensions, including missile launches by Iran and continued exchanges of fire between Israel and Hezbollah. Witness videos show significant damage to apartment buildings, with residents rushing to help the wounded. Officials warn the latest violence could further strain the fragile ceasefire and raise the risk of a broader conflict. In related developments, the Israeli military says it detected incoming ballistic missiles from Iran late on Sunday, marking the first such incident since early April. The CNN reports warning sirens were activated across northern Israel as residents were alerted to take cover. The Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, reported that 2 missiles were successfully intercepted, but cautioned that additional waves of attacks could follow. In response to the escalation, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is said to have convened an emergency security meeting. The development comes after Iran warned it would retaliate if Israel launched strikes on Beirut. Earlier that day, Israeli forces carried out an attack on the Lebanese capital following rocket fire from Hezbollah targeting northern Israel. In other news overseas, Russian President Vladimir Putin has rejected Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's call for a face-to-face meeting, saying there was no point in holding talks. The CNN reports Ukrainian President Zelensky had urged direct negotiations in an open letter released as Russian President Putin prepared to speak at a major economic forum in St. Petersburg. The Kremlin dismissed the proposal, with officials suggesting Zelensky could travel to Moscow if he wanted discussions. In his letter, the Ukrainian president argued that the prolonged war is taking a growing toll on Russia, including its economy and public sentiment. He also accused his Russian counterpart of repeatedly delaying military objectives, particularly in eastern Ukraine, and predicted Russia would fail to meet its targets this year. President Zelensky ended with a warning that history shows internal pressure could eventually bring change in Russia as the war drags on. And finally, renowned Australian cancer specialist Dr. Richard Scolyer has died at the age of 59, 3 years after being diagnosed with an aggressive brain tumor. The BBC reports Dr. Scolyer gained international attention after choosing to undergo a groundbreaking experimental treatment for glioblastoma developed with his colleague and close friend Professor Georgina Long. Their work, originally based on advances in melanoma research, has saved many lives and helped spark early-stage clinical trials in the United States. Even while battling illness, Dr. Scolyer said he remained committed to contributing to science and helping others. In a farewell letter, he reflected on a life filled with passion, purpose, and meaningful connections. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese paid tribute to Dr. Scolyer, calling him an extraordinary figure whose courage and contributions inspired many. And that concludes today's edition of World News in 5. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this has been Steph Vicente. Good day and stay safe, everyone.
World News in 5.
Right now.
News and developments making headlines around the world in 5 minutes. World News in 5. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.